My guest of the day is an eminent personality, lawyer, which we will talk about later. But right now, the reason he's in studio is because he's president of the CFBP. The CFBP is doing yeoman service, a council for fair business practices. Wonderful to see you. How are you doing this morning?
Absolutely wonderful, Rishi. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be on your show.
Your mission statement, as far as CFBP is concerned, what would that be?
To promote the best and the highest ethical practices amongst manufacturers and to ensure that the consumers are fully aware of their rights in a nutshell. So if there is a manufacturer who is erring, then we shall ensure that we pull him up or pull her up and tell them to toe the line as much as possible without going to the courts of law, and at the same time tell that small consumer on the street or even at a very, very high level that these are your rights. Mera hak, mera right is one of the slogan, the motto of this organization, which we profess and propagate both.
You know, you're an eminent man as far as your stature in business is concerned, and all your work in the law. But the organization itself, which is CFBP, has a very rich history, very rich and glorious past. I'd like you to talk about that. And a little birdie tells me that you are indeed carrying on that glorious past because you put in a very long tenure.
Yes, Rishi, just to tell your audience, this organization, Council for Fair Business Practices, was founded in 1966 by the then titans, the giants of industry, Mr. J.R.D. Tata, Mr. Soli Godrej, Mr. Ramkrishna Bajaj, Mr. F.T. Khorakiwala, Mr. Jamshed Gazdar, and many other eminent industrialists, including some top professionals, on the Gandhi Jayanti Day, October 2, 1966. I mean, it was one of those moments, I'm sure, when they thought that, I mean, look at the vision, Rishi, of these giants. They must have seen so far into the future that 40, 50 years down the road, when the competition would be fierce, the manufacturers would tend to skip the line or digress from their values for profit making to achieve that, that pound of flesh. And in that, the consumers would be completely stampeded. So that is where then the CFBP would come in and try to ensure and make the consumers aware of their rights, and at the same time rein in the manufacturers and tell them that, look, we are there. Before the courts of law, we are there. So that is one of the most important functions of our organization. And as far as my long tenure is concerned, I'm one of those privileged few. Only the second president in the history. The first president was Mr. Arvind Mafatlal, then Mr. Naval Tata, and very, very eminent people, Mr. Harish Mahendra. 1977 to 1983, every presidentship is for 2 years, and he was there for 3 terms, that is 6 years. And I took over the presidency of this organization from 2018. So my third term starts from October 2022 till September 24. So in that sense, I have equaled his tenure. But what I'm waiting for, Rishi, is to ensure that I equal the amount of work and the great work that man must have done. That will be my swan song as such, and something which I would be proud of and take home, when I'm no longer the president at some point.
It's a very tricky situation. India has the background of being socialistic, and all of a sudden, when Dr. Manmohan Singh, opened up the economy, and the powers of capitalism came in, India became conflicted. Because there was a whole generation that grew up on socialistic values, and all of a sudden, greed was considered good, and monopolistic practices came into play. And you've been watching that very, very closely, not only in your work with the law, but also as president of Council for Fair Business Practices. So how does one strike a balance, is my question to you.
Fantastic question, Rishi. This is something which, you would, even ask the World Trade Organization, and they would say that, look, we have to strike a balance between trade and environment. The way we strike a balance between husband and wife in marriage. It's the same thing. You've got to marry the two, and it's extremely tough, let me tell you that. But at the same time, you have to ensure that profits, because profit making is there. And now the key words are corporate social responsibility, environmental sustainability, ESG, and all of those things. What are they pointing at? They're pointing at that, look, you're right as a capitalistic economy to promote competition, to have that greed is good, to use Michael Douglas in Wall Street. And at the same time, we are there as CFBB to ensure that, look, if you tend to transgress that line, then we are going to tell you, please step back. This is where you're not going to go forward, and you're going to ensure that people are not trampled upon. We're not saying that do something for the greater good all the time. We are saying that please factor in that aspect as well. Because if you're going to have all stakeholders and everybody involved to ensure that you are doing wonderful as an organization, your happiness, and that's the reason why we have one of the key events which takes place every year, Rishi. It's in its 34th chapter. We're going to have it now very soon in May, where we've had the likes of Dr. Abdul Kalam and Mr. Manmohan Singh and everybody, top, Mr. Arundhati Bhattacharya and Mr. Anand Singhan, and all of them as our chief guests, Jamnalal Bajaj Awards for fair business practices. So this is something which we look at very, very seriously. We invite applications from across the country, from top corporates, even charitable organizations. There is an eminent jury which is presided over by one of our advisory board members, that is Mr. B.N. Sri Krishna, who's the former Supreme Court judge. He needs no introduction. He's the chairman of the jury. As president, I have very little say in that. I ensure that the jury takes care of that, and then, the winner is felicitated at our function with a chief guest.
Wonderful. I urge you to go to cfbp.org. cfbp.org. It's a very, very comprehensive website, and it will give you an idea of all the wonderful activities that they're undertaking. Also, there's a mobile app. If you're on Android, you can go to the Play Store and download the CFBP app. If you're on iOS, then you go to the Apple iOS store and download that particular app. I want to come to your code for manufacturers. Would you give us the salient features of the code that you've put down for manufacturers so that you can be the bridge between the manufacturer and the consumer?
Right. The code is very simple. You practice fairly. You do not indulge in unnecessary competition or unfair competition. You do not advertise wrongly. These are the three main things as such. And the rest is of course, the consumers to be aware, as we use the word in law, caveat emptor, that means the buyer beware. But at the same time, we are ensuring that this code is there for the manufacturers. The three salient features, as I pointed out, that you have to be fair in whatever you do. You do not oversell. There may be a little bit of a puffery, but it cannot be to the extent that something which is not there, you are trying to say that, this is there. And then the third part is also to ensure that you try to maximize your profit at the same time, but please ensure that the customer satisfaction is also there. So paramountcy of customer satisfaction is the key, and that stems only when you are fair. And if you're not fair, then we are there, because we have a very, very active grievance cell which caters to about 300 to 400 complaints every month, small complaints, sometimes big ones. And then of course we have these seminars, webinars as the comprehensive activities which your audience can go to our website and find.
I want to now understand, put on the manufacturer's hat and understand how you deal with trolls. Let me explain. With the advent of the online proliferation of social media brands, often you find people getting online and trolling manufacturers, getting on their handle and saying this airline has done this to me, and then they get hordes of people behind that particular person or that product manufacturer and saying, this product was delivered like this and that. You obviously have to have a great team that monitors what is an actual consumer complaint versus what you and me would call trolling.
Yes, Rishi, that's that's one of the biggest challenges that we face, because when complaints come to us, we have to sift out the wheat from the chaff. I mean, we have to ensure that this is a legitimate complaint. This is not some agony aunt or a crybaby who's coming and trying to just troll someone because that person is big or mighty, and you had some cudgels before with that person. So we have to ensure that this is a legitimate complaint, and it's very easy to check it up because what we've tried to do through this app is also one of the features which we are going to incorporate a little bit more seriously, is a direct bridge between the manufacturer and the consumer, so that the consumer will put in the complaint, obviously be routed through us, and we'll definitely inform the manufacturer that, and the manufacturer would know that this is a complaint, and we would be there as a medium to tell him or her that, look, this sounds like a a bogus complaint, I don't think you need to really look at it. Or alternatively, it's a fabulous complaint and it's a proper one, and I think you need to take it up very seriously. So there is a definite executive assistance team which looks at it, and since years, Rishi, they've been doing this, so it's very easy for them now to make out which one is absolute farce. And now all the more so since about couple of years, you've seen social media being active. So generally we would know. I mean, at the first blush of it, I don't even get involved in this part, but the team looks at it, and if something gets really out of hand, then it comes to me, and then I'll say, I'll take a call more as a mediator. And that's the reason, Rishi, we've started a mediation cell. A mediation cell is very important. It's an alternative dispute resolution where we try to make people sit together. We don't charge a penny, and alternatively, a mediator would charge.
Is it like what an ombudsman does? I mean, somewhat like that. Yeah.
Yes, Rishi, that's exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. So we do it absolutely free. We call them to wherever they want to. If they want to come to our conference, if they want to come to a neutral place, two warring factions, we try to get them married again, and try to see that if it's resolved, and if it's not, and if somebody just sticks to his or her own guns, then I think then the court of law is the only option. Because if they don't want to listen, and there are people like that, who, if the stakes run extremely high, then they may not want to settle for something less if they sometimes firmly believe it's just like the practice of law. I mean, I've got several clients who come to me and I refuse. I tell them, don't go to the court. I mean, just settle it. You're getting enough 60-70%, but some people are just obstinate.
I want to understand whether you also get into intellectual property and copyright issues, or are you only sticking to manufacturers and products?
So far, we haven't had any copyright issues as such, but tomorrow, if it comes, then I think our mediation cell would take care of it, because that is just one another aspect of, a dispute. So that is something which we would have to take care. I mean,
wonderful. Now, what he meant by having these wonderful workshops is on the 29th of March, they did a very interesting workshop called the Women's Career Expo. Now, even though it's in the past, I'd like to talk about it, because this is the kind of stuff that you do. And you got some wonderful aspiring entrepreneurs to interact with prominent ladies, personalities and achievers. So as a template, these are the kind of workshops that you do. I'd like you to talk about it.
I'll tell you where this stems from, Rishi. First of all, I wanted to take CFBP nationwide. When I took over as president, I noticed that it was exclusive but not accessible. It always had this, people had this notion of, Tatas, Birlas, Godrej. I mean, we're not anywhere near there. But I wanted to make it accessible. You can be accessible and yet be exclusive. And it's not only to appeal to the minds of the classes, but the hearts of the masses as well are very important. And that's the way you are going to be able to make a dent, and you're going to be able to approach and go nationwide. That's the reason why the Kolkata chapter began. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Women empowerment is something which I've taken up very passionately as president, because I believe that the CFBP is an absolute sham if it does not look after women empowerment, because women have been the recipients of the biggest unfair practices since time immemorial. So if we cannot look after that particular aspect, 50% of our population is women, then that is something which then as an organization, we would not have done our job or done our duty. So we got somebody, was introduced to us, the person who heads the cafe, which is Career After Family Enterprise. Her name is Kavita Agarwal. She founded in 2019, and she, they came out with a book, a lovely book, in fact, Rishikesh. This was 40 women after 40, giving their stories as to after 40, how did they build their careers, or what did they do, and what challenges they face. So we launched that book, and then Kavita mentioned to us, she's also a part of CFBP now, and we took her up, and she mentioned to us that, there is an expo that I'm planning, a career expo, which will look at everything related to women empowerment and women career and all of that. So we said, definitely we are on board with this, and we co-hosted this. And Rishi, let me tell you, we had to close the registration before a couple of days. There were so many people who were registering, and we had a footfall of about 1,200 to 1,500 people at Taj Bengal.
Wow.
So, it has taken Kolkata by storm, and not only that, but CFVP is, gone really, really places, as far as Kolkata is concerned, we did something in Delhi also, where it was a reverse, where one of the persons who heads our Delhi chapter, Barkha Trian, she is into men's rights. So she awarded men. So we said, why don't we put our hands in that as well? Because she's totally anti-Me Too and all of those things, because she believes it's more of a farce and, other things. So she said, well, I don't mind, I'll try to get into this as well. I'm not one of those awardees. So I ensured that we are not those. We don't, but we'll propagate that. We'll endorse that aspect also. And that's the way we make CFBP known in Delhi also.
Yeah, I again want to remind you, if you go to cfbp.org on the 30th of this month, we're a couple of weeks away from it, is the Jawaharlal Bajaj Awards for Fair Business Practices. You can read a little bit about that.
It's going to be there in about first or second week of May. The date is a little
so he's just
changed because of the chief guest.
Yeah, please note that. It says 30th of April as of now, but like Mr. Kothari said, likely to be in the first or the second week of May, and I'm sure they'll put it up there. That's something of interest to you. And like he said, books. There's an interesting book there called Titans of Fair Business Practices by Vikesh Walia. So you can go and get a bit of that and educate yourself on what your consumer rights are and what you as a manufacturer can do. And there's an interesting ticker which I'd like you to talk about, which actually talks about on the website how many complaints you've received, how many you've redressed, how many under process, and how many you've closed. We're often accused in India of having too few courts and too many cases and no closure of cases. Who would know better than you as a lawyer?
Right. Oh, yes, absolutely, Hrishi. I mean, that's one of the key things that we look at. I mean, we receive, say, on an average, as I said, 300 complaints. And if we ask for the documents and if, we close about 150 to 160 on an average. And then there are some people, 70, 80 who says, no, sorry, we are not ready to, not happy with this. We want to go to a court of law. And then there are some 50, 60 who don't provide us with the documents. So then we just leave them aside because we believe that those were not legitimate. And as far as the Titans book that you mentioned, it's felicitating the 9 Titans. And the book is about to be launched very soon. So we'll put up the launch date as well. This is already out. It's been published by the Times Group, where we felicitate 9 of the 9 Titans, some of whom are J.R.D. Tata, Naval Tata, Mr. Jamshed Jamshed Gazdar, and those Mr. Hari Bhakti, who has been a past president. He's 92, he's still alive, and he's as active with all faculties. In fact, when we took his bite, what we did, Hrishi Kay, is because we thought that when we launched this book, we might not have all the Titans under one roof on that day, because of their schedule. And so we went individually to each of them. We took their bites, what they had to say, and trust me, it was a pleasure seeing a 92-year-old or a 93-year-old man talking passionately about CFPP with full faculties intact, non-stop extempore. And I thought I was one of the best extempore orators. But trust me, that was a pleasure. I don't know whether I'll be even alive at 92, but
I want to get into your career in law. I mean, you did your master's from Georgetown in the U.S. You worked in London, Cleveland, New York City, now in Mumbai. You're a panelist on various TV channels, board of several Fortune 500 Indian companies. Do you actively still practice the law? Is S. Kothari and Company advocates and solicitors? How much of your time does that take up, and how much does CFBP take up?
Superb question. It's Hrishi, I'll tell you something. I have never pursued success. I've always pursued excellence in whatever I do, and law is my passion. It's my profession. CFVP is another passion, along with chess and cryptic crosswords and sudokus and all of that. I find time for everything, fortunately, with the kind of backing that I have from my support, from my wife, from my mother, and from my daughter, and from my entire lovely...
You're like me, surrounded by women, the right women.
Absolutely.
2 daughters, a wife,
yes,
and mother and mother-in-law. So
oh, excellent. and Hrishi, those make a difference. And I have a wonderful team at CFVP. Trust me, I spend only about 40 to 50 minutes every day diligently on CFVP.
Wow.
Everything else is devoted to the practice of law, to channels in the night, mostly because and I do it from home because my Wi-Fi is fantastic. So I don't even have to go to the studios. So COVID played a nice role in that sense.
Viva la Zoom and Teams meetings and all video software.
Skype, yes, absolutely. And you're as good as that. So yes, I have practiced abroad. I've seen about 35 states of the United States, half of the world. I've practiced in several jurisdictions, and It comes naturally to me. Let's put it that way. Law comes very naturally to me. I don't. I read something, I grasp it very fast, and I can get to the nub of the issue in no time, and I can put up a very strong resistance to some of the best lawyers in the country.
Beautiful. It's absolutely honored and pleased to meet you. Some of my greatest public speaker heroes have been lawyers, the great Nani Palkiwala and others. And it's wonderful to meet a well-spoken man and continue the great work that you're doing. Cheers.
Thank you, Rishikesh. Thank you. It was both a pleasure and privilege. Thank you once again.